Good evening, guys. Today, me, Tegan, Sarah, and Amanda will be explaining the importance of teaching environmental literacy in today's Ontario curriculum.
Environmental literacy is the understanding of and the interactions between systems and nature, humans' impact on nature, and nature's impact on humans. This knowledge of these interactions and systems should hopefully aid people to take informed action to combat climate change.
What is environmental literacy? Well, it's more than just learning about nature. It's about understanding our relationship with the environment and taking meaningful action to protect it. Environmental literacy is about having the knowledge, skills, and motivation to solve environmental challenges while balancing ecological, economic, and social stability. It's about making sense of the natural systems, recognizing our role in them, and engaging informed discussions about how we impact the world around us. Why does environmental literacy matter? Well, environmental literacy encourages awareness of how our choices affect the environment while creating a deeper understanding of environmental systems and its processes. It encourages an appreciation for all living things and creates a sense of responsibility towards them. As David Attenborough once said, if children don't grow up knowing about nature, they won't understand it. And if they don't understand it, then they won't protect it. Environmental literacy will ensure that future generations are prepared to engage in solving environmental challenges. A generation who understands ecology, cares about the environment, and has the skills to identify, analyze diverse environmental problems, and is motivated to work towards multiple solutions.
I'm going to be talking about 3 articles that discuss the importance of learning about environmental literacy. The sources look at the importance of teaching this literacy in classrooms. My first source is a research article that was working on developing activities in the classroom to bring about environmental literacy. The article was part of the larger research project, which included a previous study that was carried out with 255 children that were age 9 to 13 and tested about climate change. Based on those results, this article presents proposals for activities to help improve the environmental literacy of children. The objective of the study that was conducted for this article was to understand the impact of activities that were applied to 53 children to increase the environmental literacy of the children involved, in order to evaluate the impact that activities had and to look at the knowledge that was acquired by the children. To collect data, the study used a focus group technique and content analysis to examine it. The results revealed that the children acquired a better understanding of climate change, as well as they gained motivation to contribute to stopping the problem. The study concludes that the activities used could be helpful to improve environmental literacy, as well as help children's curiosity and their want to improve the world when they are older. The second source is another research article that examined ecological literacy results in 2 5th grade classrooms, one being a green classroom and the other was non-green. The study was exploratory with no curriculum interventions. Results showed that students' overall ecological literacy did not grow across the school year, but students did use the physical classrooms to make human ecosystem connections. Students were aware of ecological impacts of the 2 classrooms and describe the impacts differently, as the students in the green classroom described a positive human ecosystem relationship, while students in the other used more negative tones. These results suggest that students do make human ecosystem connections but require curriculum to support ideas. The final source examined how computer games help children learn and gain interest in climate change science by making it relevant and understandable. The study was conducted in a public school district in the southeastern United States, and the curriculum Climate Change Narrative Game Education, or CHANGED, use a place-based approach using data gathered from the Gulf of Mexico's coast and use video games, a scientifically web-based science fiction novel about future Gulf Coast residents, and hands-on lab activities. Students who participated in the CHANGED curriculum scored higher than peers who did not, and their beliefs about climate change increased in validity. The design of the computer games had strong impact on students' understanding of storms and sea rise levels. Overall, these articles focused on the importance of environmental literacy in classrooms and can be looked at for examples of what kinds of activities or projects that can be used to further improve environmental literacy.
Moving on, I will be discussing 3 sources that explore environmental education and literacy. These sources highlight the importance of fostering environmental awareness through various educational approaches, from outdoor learning to critical analysis of narratives and children's literature. The first source is a research article focusing on environmental education and the development of environmental literacy. It emphasizes that direct experiences with nature, like outdoor education, are more effective than classroom-based instruction in fostering environmental awareness. The study examines a summer environmental education program, SEEP, at Akdenitz University, which included modules like science, biodiversity, art, and drama. For example, students conducted experiments on water, air, and soil, observed flora and fauna in a botanical garden, and even created music and art inspired by nature. The results showed significant improvements in students' environmental knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. However, the study acknowledges limitations such as the lack of a control group, and it concludes that outdoor education programs are highly effective and recommends integrating them into school curricula. The second source focuses on climate justice literacy and the use of eco-linguistics in education. It introduces the concept of stories we live by narratives that shape our understanding of human-environment relationships. The article highlights harmful stories, like the idea that humans are separate from and are superior to nature, and beneficial stories, such as indigenous narratives and youth activism. It encourages educators to use inquiry-based learning to help students critically analyze these stories and their impact on climate change. The paper aims to advocate for ecosophy, a term they coined that encapsulates ecological philosophy to guide teaching practices. They suggest that educators should define their ecological commitments and use local issues to address real-world problems. This approach aims to empower students to become active participants in climate justice. The last source investigates how children's literature in kindergarten classrooms represent nature. Using an eco-critical perspective, the study analyzes 862 picture books from a kindergarten classroom in Turkey, identifying 63 nature-related books. The findings show a lack of representation in nature and emphasizes a need for diverse and inclusive nature-themed literature to enhance children's environmental literacy. It recommends that curriculum makers and teachers should prioritize such books to foster environmental awareness from an early age. All in all, these sources highlights not only the importance of environmental education, but the importance of diversifying these approaches to it. Whether through outdoor experiences, critical analysis of narratives, or inclusive children's literature, together they highlight the need for innovative and inclusive strategies to cultivate environmentally literate and responsible individuals.
Now, let's look at integrating environmental literacy into education. To start, we need students to understand environmental issues. So, how do you make sure students understand? We must begin with literacy strategies that make environmental learning natural and engaging. First is integrated curriculum. This means reinforcing environmental learning inside the classroom without making it feel like an extra subject. Instead of treating environmental education as its individual, we incorporate it into existing lessons. For example, in Canada, the creation of the National Framework for Environmental Learning is helping to push education beyond awareness and into action. But the key here is teachers. Teachers must be informed before they effectively teach the students. To help teachers, schools can offer pre-service environmental courses and continue PD days to ensure that they are informed and up to date on environmental knowledge. Next is multidisciplinary curriculum. The environment is everywhere, so we can study ecological systems in different subjects. Like math, we can study climate change statistics. In science, we can learn about ecosystems and biodiversities. In phys ed, we can focus on outdoor activities like activities that build connections with nature and gets us engaged. In language arts, well, students can read and write about environmental issues, ensuring they develop a deeper understanding. It's important that students understand the nuanced relationships of Mother Earth in order to implement them. At the end of the day, education doesn't just happen in classrooms, it begins at the home. Early exposure to nature and sustainable habits can make a huge difference in ecological literacy. Whether it's recycling, composting, or exploring nature, families play a significant role in shaping environmental responsible kids. Environmental literacy isn't just about understanding the facts, it's about fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and real-world problem-solving skills. The first method out of the three that we're going to explore for literacy strategies is experiential learning. One of the best ways to learn is by doing. That's where experiential learning comes in. This strategy helps students connect with environmental concepts in a hands-on way. Some great methods for experiential learning include land-based learning, so taking the lessons outdoors, connecting with the actual material, the nature, and understanding ecosystems firsthand. Another one is project-based learning, so if you don't have access to the outdoors, you can encourage students to work on real-world problems by projects that create tangible impacts. Third way is interactive game. Again, if you don't have access to outdoors, you can use either physical games like the ones from phys ed or virtual games to help make fun learning and immersive while reinforcing those ecological principles. The second model is inquiry-based learning. Now, it's another powerful strategy is inquiry-based learning, which develops critical thinking skills through exploration and questioning. Now, this is more prominent in science with the scientific inquiry approach, using scientific methods to investigate real-world ecological problems and manipulating and understanding relationships between deeper issues. Another way is problem-based learning, so presenting students with environmental problems and guiding them towards research and finding a solution. Next is interdisciplinary learning, so bringing environmental literacy into multiple subjects rather than making it relevant to just one area of study. The best way to gain a strong grasp of environmental literacy is to embrace Indigenous perspectives as well. Indigenous people have a deep relationship with nature and have successfully stewarded their environment for some time now. It's not a religion, it's just a way of life. That's what it is, life. And learning firsthand from that perspective and using Indigenous voices will reshape frameworks and expand that literacy. It's important to involve Indigenous voices and highlight the knowledge that people have that's not from just academic studies, but comes from experience. This knowledge is best shared in person and experienced in the moment. Value is lost a little when it's written down or recorded just to be shared and played over and over again so a teacher can get a curriculum checkmark. Learning from elders and experts will create guidance and allow students to enrich their understanding of ecological stewardship.
For students in grade 4, one way of applying the curriculum for a hands-on project is having them design their own habitats, helping them to understand life systems. Choosing their own medium, they will design a habitat that will provide a community of organisms with their basic needs. In their habitat, students will describe a food chain with carnivores, omnivores, and herbivores, and classify organisms as producers, consumers, or decomposers. Students will present their habitats via video or slideshow and answer the following questions. What, if any, adaptations would any of the organisms have to make to survive in the habitat they designed? How the extinction or depletion of an organism of their choosing would affect the others in their habitat, as well as how the overpopulation of an organism in their habitat would affect the rest. As well, students will answer what negative or positive impacts would the introduction of humans have on their habitat. This project will help them understand life systems and how we interact with them and how they interact among themselves. Through my attempt at this project, we may be able to see how this is a practical application of environmental literacy. In this habitat based on a southern Ontario forest, I had to consider which animals to include so that I had a well-rounded ecosystem, and that all the organisms living there would have sustenance. I considered the food chain and how plants would need other plants like decomposers to help provide them with nutrients the same way decomposers need plants and animal waste to sustain their life. In my habitat, the mushrooms, worms, slugs, and beetles consume animal waste, dead leaves, and fallen trees to survive. I also had to consider which vegetation would feed larger herbivores as well as omnivores, and included natural berry bushes that grow in Ontario like blueberries and raspberries, and other ground plants like sweetgrass. From there, I chose my herbivores, animals like deer, rabbits, and squirrels, and my omnivores like fox, frogs, chipmunks, otters, and ducks. Lastly, I picked carnivores to maintain the population of the community and decided on a hawk, badger, and mountain lion. While designing this, I had to consider the implications of each organism I included, as well as I had to consider what essentials these animals needed to survive, like food, shelter, and water. Finally, while designing, I thought through the proposed questions, such as the impact humans may have on my habitat. They may cause pollution of the water, possibly scare off animals, or disturb the plant life, causing there to be a lack of food or resources in order for the community to survive. I thought about what would happen if there was too many herbivores, or too little, and how there would not be enough berries or grass for all of them, or the berries and grass would overgrow, killing off the trees that provide food and shelter. Even though I already understand all of this and love nature, I believe that I had to engage deeply with the concepts in the curriculum in order to design the ecosystem that made sense. The same way students, with the guidance of their teachers, would engage in that same interaction with the curricular concepts and hopefully learn something through a creative project that they get to share with their peers.
One practical example I'd like to share is a field trip activity I've designed for the Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington, Ontario, called Ecosystem Explorers. This activity is a hands-on way to teach students about the interconnectedness of living and non-living things in a habitat, while also addressing key Ontario curriculum expectations. To start, students will work in small groups to complete a scavenger hunt checklist. For example, they'll find a producer, like a tree, a consumer, like a bird, and a decomposer, like fungi. These organisms are part of a food chain, and students will reflect on how they depend on each other to survive. Students will also identify a habitat, such as a pond or a forest, and describe how it provides the necessities of life like air, water, food, and shelter for the plants and animals living there. The activity directly connects to two key curriculum expectations. Expectation 2.1 outlines how students should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the natural environment as a place where living and non-living things are interconnected. For example, they'll observe how plants, animals, soil, and water work together to create a healthy habitat. Secondly, Expectation 2.3 outlines how students should be able to identify the physical characteristics of plants and animals and explain how these characteristics help them meet their basic needs. For example, they might observe how a bird's beak is adapted for eating insects and how a tree's roots help it absorb water. By the end of this trip, students would have hopefully gained a deeper understanding of the ecosystems and the importance of protecting them. This activity not only engages students in hands-on learning, but also encourages critical thinking and real-world connections.
Environmental literacy gets covered under different names in the curriculum in Ontario. From K to 8, environmental literacy is most explored under the category of science and technology in the strand life systems. In secondary school, students explore environmental literacy during their grade 9 and 10 science biology units, where they assess the impacts of climate change on sustainability of ecosystems in various communities, plus discover ways to mitigate these impacts. Students also work to understand the dynamic and interconnected nature of ecosystems and the cycles of matter and energy flowing through them. Also briefly addressing environmental impacts of space travel in their Earth and space units. Then, students really hone in on the possible action they could take during the Sustainability and Stewardship unit in grade 10 science. In grade 11 and 12, students have the opportunity to learn the most in-depth about environmental science in specific biology and environmental science courses.
To conclude, environmental literacy involves the understanding of systems in nature and how human actions impact these systems. It is important for children to have knowledge of the natural world to make sense of the world that they will create for themselves and their peers. The sources talked about today highlight the importance of environmental education, experiential learning, inquiry-based learning, and Indigenous land-based learning through projects like the Habitat Project. Children are able to get the exposure that they need in order to have a better understanding of environmental literacy.